This is Bam like the Ghost, and we're live on the air with Chris Abdey, procrast- Procrastination Coach. And this is the first time we've had you on the show. I want to welcome you to the Family Like the Ghost podcast. How you doing tonight?
I'm doing awesome. How you doing?
Doing all right. So want to let people know we do have your LinkedIn there, linkedin.com/in/Chris Abdey uh, and that will be fully clickable. So you don't have to remember that when we're published on the internet. But we are live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch at the moment. And again, thank you for being on the show. We always ask any guest that's on the show a couple questions before we get into the heart of your story. And a couple of questions are like, what motivates you, and why do you do what you do?
Right. So, what motivates me? Honestly, since a young age, what motivates me the most is just helping somebody or helping somebody find their purpose, their meaning, helping them get over their big hump. I mean, that is the most rewarding thing, at least in my opinion, and that's definitely what motivates me.
That's awesome. So, what made you want to go into this line of coaching and procrastination coaching?
Well, I am a master procrastinator. I mean, everybody always asks, and I've had my share of procrastination, and like many of us, I didn't have any consequences to it until much later on in life, and so I did actually procrastinate in one sense. Um, in terms of my mother, I didn't really have a really good great relationship with her, so towards the end, I mean, they told us that she was on the way out, and I was always busy, always finding something else to do. So it's uncomfortable for me to go to the nursing home to go see her. Finally,
Hmm.
put it down on the calendar to go, and she actually died the Sunday before I was going to go. Literally, space of 15 hours.
Wow.
So that procrastination robbed me of that, and so that's why coupled with my long history of procrastination, in other instances, I decided to really focus on procrastination and specifically, the dreamers that have, plans, but they just don't, uh,
Actualism.
yeah, they don't know how to get going really. Yeah.
Well, I think what I found, from a creative point of view as a musician, what we run into is people are trying to be perfect. Like if we go into the studio, and the example is like you go run through like something a track like 99 times, you spend like 8 hours on the same track, and what you start to get is the diminishing returns. And then what happens is also sometimes like you do those 100 takes, and then you decide you're not even going to put it out because you've kind of demoralized yourself to the point where now you don't think it's good because you've gone in kind of, it's like a self fulfilling prophecy. It's like imposter syndrome on steroids. You've gotten and proven to yourself that the song's no good because you actually wrecked the song.
Yeah, that sounds familiar in some cases. I've done some things like that in terms of writing. Actually, in terms of writing right now, even now, a little bit of perfectionist. You want to have a good podcast, want to do a double take, or you're writing an article and you write it, you read it, you say, "Oh, that's not quite right." You rewrite it again, and then at the end, you just got a bunch of a bunch of garbage that doesn't even look like what it was supposed to look like in the first place. So I understand that.
Yeah, I think it's just a matter of, sometimes you can't even start like the procrastination. You got the idea, you got the bug of an idea. And you keep on saying, I'm going to jump on the piano, I'm going to jump on the typewriter, I'm going to go hit the voice memo. And then somehow you like convince yourself, like, no, we'll do it later. Like this isn't the right moment. And I think it's like you have to kind of, I think it all starts with like a self valuation. Like it's like looking to like, do you trust yourself? Like to do you can really want to do, but you like you don't have the confidence level, right?
Mhm. That's correct. Sometimes when we want to start something, we again, like you mentioned, we get that imposter syndrome. Sometimes we're up against people with a lot more experience, and we think that they're doing better than us, and we think, oh well, how could my first attempt compare to the
Yeah,
great,
comparison trap.
the comparison trap, exactly.
Quentin Tarantino, if he's gonna look at, like, Citizen Kane, then you're like, "Well, I guess they should never even do the movie," because, like, the first thing Orson Welles does is, like, "Well, Citizen Kane, so how if I can't match that, like, what the heck?" But you have to kinda, like, well, sometimes you put something out into the universe, you put it out into the world, you have no idea how people are gonna see it or hear it. A lot of times as the person who's writing, you don't know, like, your audience as well as you might think you do. And, you can get surprised by the things that they like in in your work that you didn't even think they were ever, pick up on that. You thought they'd pick up on something else. And I'm always very surprised by the things people pull out of what you create is not always what you intended.
Oh, that's very true. I remember one of the first podcasts I did. I felt I did horribly at it. The line of questioning, it wasn't smooth. It was there were lots of tech issues, and in the end, the other party that wasn't happy with it either. So I just thought it was I thought it was a write off, but I posted it, and what wound up happening is a little while later, somebody actually wrote to me and said that was the best episode that I've done so far because it really helped her and her mother. So yeah, you're right. You absolutely have no idea what somebody may or may not find useful. So just put everything out there.
I think sometimes people want to start, from 0 to 100 and they don't know how to divide up the work into chunks that are, like, digestible. So, like, if I'm working on an album, right, maybe I should actually work on the single or a song or a melody or just the bass lines. Like, sometimes you take too much. Like, even in the songs, like, maybe I should just work on the bass line. But then if you say, "Well, I'm gonna work on the whole song," well, maybe that might be too much for the moment. And so you might not even do that if you're trying to do, like, the entire song, you know what I mean? Like, you gotta figure out how to, take digestible bits and, figure out how to string them together, but sometimes you just gotta start with the bits.
That's very correct. And something that a lot of people think is that, oh man, well, maybe that step is too small. That some people break it down so much that they might even take that the bass line or take the melody, just find two chords. Get your first two chords. They might think that's too small, but it's
Yeah,
not,
yeah.
because once you find those two perfect starting chords, then you start to build your confidence and you start to say, okay, I can do the next one, then the next one, then the next
Yeah, 'cause it's like, you have to tell I mean, I've talked to a lot of authors, and from, like, world building fantasy authors to authors that are doing, like, self-help books. And, it's always kind of like, everybody has their method. But a lot of times, like, you have a story to tell, you have something you want to do, you can, outline it from a high level, right? But a lot of times it's kind of in that flow state that you give yourself a chance to do some flow state, kind of just type and see what comes out. And then you have an idea of what the paradigm should be. But if something comes out that is actually better than what you planned, I've run into authors, like, suddenly it's like, I'm gonna change this whole concept because suddenly in my flow state, I found a better idea than what I had actually planned.
one. That can happen sometimes as well, and a lot of times what happens too is that once you have that new idea, I call it the shiny new object syndrome. Sometimes it's not quite perfectionism, but it's, oh, I found something better, I found something better, I found something better,
Or you
and
have to
then
do too much, there's too many too many new ideas.
exactly. And then there's too many, and then you're paralyzed because you've got too many things that are better, and then you might get caught in that trap and say, "Oh well, you know, if this is that good, and I've had two other good ones, I'm going to wait for my next good one."
Yeah. Or you could be kinda like, if you have this, like, I don't know, if you're very expansive, it's like, you could be working on something and something comes up and say, "Well, you know what? That doesn't fit this." but that could fit something else. So I would just put it on the shelf, right? So then you're still like in this flow, but you start to make some discernment. Like, yeah, this still is in the theme of what I'm working on. So these kind of go together. Like you put them on the Kanban board, and like these things go together. These low post-its are aligned, and these ones aren't. And these ones go over this other area till I figure out what to do with them.
Mhm. I mean, that's a very good system as well too, especially if you're a creative person and you get a lot of new ideas all the time. Those new ideas can be distracting. So yeah, by all means, write it down. Get a little post-it note, like you said, stick it on the wall or on the desk next to you, and then see where it fits later.
So when people feel overwhelmed, like what's your best advice? Like, do you have some tricks or the trade or ways to cap that down or kind of deal with that trigger and adjust?
Oh, for sure. Mindfulness is my number one go-to. I know everybody. I know there's at least five people in the audience that just went, really again.
Really?
I know it's been shoved down our throats a lot, but mindfulness really is one of the best ways to kind of get out of that overwhelm, because a lot of the overwhelm tends to revolve around the outcome of whatever you're supposed to be doing. And when you're in the present moment, there is no room for anxiety or fears or anything like that, because most of the anxiety is from something in the future and it hasn't happened yet.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
as long as you are focused on exactly what you're doing, the brain is a very good computer. So if
Mm,
you set it to do a task that's impossible, it's just going to run and run and run and run and run and run and run. But if you set it in front of yourself, then you'll be able to focus, and you'll notice that your emotions will be much more regulated. Now, one of the hacks that I really liked, it's not mine. I actually saw it on Instagram a little while ago, but it's very effective. There's a lot of science backing it up, and a lot of times people say, "Oh, I don't want to practice mindfulness or meditation because it takes too long." Yeah, I don't have 10, 15 minutes to wind down, right?
yeah, yeah.
So there's a very quick one that will work for the majority of people who are tactile. And you just take your two fingers like this, and you close your eyes. And this can be done for about 20 to 30 seconds. You don't really need more than that. You can do it as long as you want, though. And once you close your eyes and you start rubbing your fingers back and forth like that, you focus on the sensations of your fingertips, and you actually feel each ridge of the fingerprints. And what
Mm,
this is doing is this is actually forcing your mind into a super pinpointed location. And when you do that, that is like the very basis of mindfulness right there. And you're not even really focusing on much, right? Because there's no visual
yeah.
stimulus. It's
Simple.
only
Yeah.
the rhythm of the fingertips.
Tactile. Yeah. It's like if you can get yourself into some kind of tactile interaction, then you can. It's kind of like I'm Buddhist, and we get into these like chanting phrases or breathing exercises or like Tai Chi type things that a lot of times what we find is there's too much noise.
Mhm.
Like we got too many devices, we got too many inputs, too much stuff coming in. And so even as a musician, it's like if you got a lot of noise in your head, then you're not going to be clear. And I think even any kind of artist, if it's too much noise, you're not going to be clear. If you're an author, if you're an actor, a painter, then you're not. It's going to be all kind of disjointed. So if you find ways to, you know, get the noise out of your mind, so breathing exercise, putting yourself into like a kind of a mindfulness exercise or meditation state, or even like go walk in the woods, go take a walk outside to get out of your environment. Stop trying to be part of the machine. Get out of all the things that you're connected to. Like turn it off the Bluetooth. Do all that.
Yeah, actually, there is one trick too that I think you might appreciate as a musician too. So when we're trying to focus on something, you ever find yourself humming a tune? Doesn't even
Oh,
matter what tune it is. You find yourself humming a tune. It's
yeah,
because when you hum the tune, it actually quiets your thoughts. So if you've noticed, when you hum a tune, the only thing that's in there is the tune.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, we think about that a lot of times before we even put the bass line down. We're kind of putting it, we're humming it in our head. or I'm humming like the chord arrangement in my head before I put my fingers on the keyboard. And the guitar players will tell you the same thing. They get, so sometimes it's like tactile on the instrument and I'm playing with, and but other times it's actually you, the sounds in your head and you're trying to put it down. It depends on your level of musicianship, whether or not you actually can equate what's in your head to what you can actually do on the instrument. And the better you've been, the 10,000 hours you put in, the closer to actually be able to capture what's in your head. That's the
Well,
trick.
that's actually another very good point. Many of us, when it comes to procrastination, we tend to try things, and then if we don't get instant results, we'll just give it up. And again, that is because we are in a society where we're geared towards instant gratification, right? If it
Mhm.
doesn't immediately work, we don't want it. I mean, we have Instagram, 30-second reels, 90-second reels, um, delivery, same day delivery from Amazon, in 4 hours.
Yeah, instant gratification. You're like, I've got
Yeah.
if you don't get like it's like you like how many people on Amazon is like if you don't get it in 2 days and you cancel it and go find the guy who'll give it to you in 1 day, right? Because you gotta have it. It's like this guy's taking too long. Well, I can't wait. I can't wait 4 days. I gotta get it right now.
Yeah, that's a big issue as well. But one of the things that we have to understand is that delayed gratification is actually better and it lasts longer than instant gratification. Which is why a lot of us we tend to get that Amazon package and in 5 minutes we've opened it and it's done. It's gone. you know, we're
Yeah.
on Amazon again looking for another package.
Yeah, that's the problem. It's like, I'm a child of the '70s. Part of what I used to love is like the album, the record, the vinyl. Because you would listen to the whole thing. You wouldn't skip around like we're in the playlist age, which is kind of like the 1950s, like the single age. We've kind of gone back to that model. But prior to the Beatles, Sergeant Pepper, there people weren't really into albums. They're just into singles, 45, 78, stuff like that. And the Beatles kind of got people into the age of the album, all the way into the '70s, into the '80s, and then now we've kind of gone backwards back to the age of the single. And the problem with an artist is like you don't get the full picture of an artist with just one song. It's kind of like the cliff notes to a book. Like it's not giving you the whole picture of the book because you're not the depth of what they're capable of is not in their hit single. It's like in their deeper tracks. So people don't have the patience to actually stay, except for readers. Readers will still read books and they'll spend hours, if not days, in that book. But that's kind of a oddball thing in an age of the 30-second, 15-second thing we've been talking about.
Oh, it certainly is. One of the interesting things too is that along with that, people don't even read books anymore. They'll go to Chat GPT and they'll type in, hey, tell me what this book is about in 15 seconds.
Just the clip notes. They're going for the clip notes.
Yeah, well, it's not even cliff notes. It's literally four
Even
sentences.
worse.
And there's actually a company right now that puts it's 200 to 700 word books and it condenses the cliff notes and it puts the cliff notes into like a 5 minute to 15 minute audio
Audio
file.
file.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, a good professor will still pick up on that.
Well, I think there's a lot lost in translation if you translate a 700-page book. I mean, they say that in 15 minutes a day you can get smarter by listening to these books, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, you might get 1 or 2 points, but you're not gonna
You're
be an
not getting the
expert by
depth of
listening
what the author superficial superficial age where it's just the window dressing, kind of like our so you is that really the image of the real thing you're looking at? Or has it been manipulated? Is that really the words of this person or somebody chat GPT'd their words? So I don't even know what their style is. So this to me is like I came from the age of like individualism and like college radio and small bands, like what REM before they got big. the replacements before they got big. Like, looking at somebody, like Lou Reed in the Velvet Underground before he got big. Well, I like those early Velvet Underground records. Only other producers liked them. You know, it's like sometimes just because you're not big doesn't mean it's not important. Just because you don't, you could have somebody's watching 200 million views of a cat video, but you could have some poet that says something really profound and they've only got like 500 views. But that's actually more heart heart wrenching than watching the cat video that everybody loves. Everybody loves it, but it doesn't really mean that much.
No, well, that is something that is just it's a common misconception across social media in general. Just because there's 10 million views on something doesn't mean that it's more valuable than what's got 500 views. It just means that 10 million people were distracted rather than looking for something that would expand their horizons. That's all.
Yeah, and I think that's what makes people feel. I think a lot of people I've talked to, young people, is like unless they get likes and they get views, and they feel like, whoa, that's not worth doing. Where I would argue that it's better to do something that's innovative and closer to your heart, to the true you, not the comparison trap of trying to match, the Joneses, trying to match this other person. Is that it's better to actually, find your voice. And that's hard to like get the young people to say, well, I don't know if I want to find my voice because then people are gonna like lash at me. People are gonna bully me. So is that part of the problem with the procrastination, is the fear of the bullying, the fear of the rejection, the fear of those things?
Oh, for sure. That is definitely a big part of it, and especially in younger people because we grow up. You have to understand that we are conditioned from almost from birth to kind of seek and want validation. So it kind of started, where we'd take a picture to mom or dad and say, "Hey, look what I draw," and we'd expect it to go on the fridge. And the first time that it didn't get on the fridge, uh, it'd be like, "Oh, well, I thought that doesn't feel very good." And so they go and they seek validation from other people. Hey, this is a picture I drew. Is it good? Is it good? Do you like it? And social media has just sort of exasperated that in that, if it doesn't get any likes and nobody shares it, it must not be good. Therefore, I will stop trying, or I won't do it. Or I don't want to be ostracized. I want to be liked. I want to be part of the in crowd. And so that's also a big part of it, yes.
Yeah, I think it's trying to be your authentic self involves vulnerability, you know. And if you're vulnerable, then I think there's a matter of like safety. And everybody's like kind of going back to like the wolf's at the door. But it's not the physical wolf. It's the kind of virtual wolf of our modern world of, the trigger word, the look, the the not feeling like, oh, you're gonna get kicked out of the tribe and you might die. He was like, well, you're not gonna die, if you get kicked out of the social group, but you might feel like you're gonna die. So it has the same kind of tension.
Oh, that is very right. That's very correct, and then it goes back again, as you said, to the evolutionary aspects of it. It's kind of how the brain, when you feel like this fight or flight response, you feel really scared, and it doesn't matter if you're standing at the top of a building and you're going to fall, or you're sitting there and taking a math test in high school. It's your brain reacts the same way,
Yeah.
which is an evolutionary throwback.
So you got to find like hacks to get past these things. And I think that's why people come to, coaches, is like people hit the wall and it's like, wow, I really got a problem with procrastination. I got a problem with, you know, being a imposter syndrome. I don't have a growth mindset. So I need some help. So when somebody gets to you or comes to you, um, like how do you bring them in? I mean, what's your kind of guiding principles or guiding words for the person that approaches you with their issues?
Well, the first thing that they have to do is they have to understand why they're procrastinating. They have to know themselves, and they have to know what kind of procrastinator they are. Because there's five basic types, right? Now, we generally fall into more than one kind at a time, but there's five basic types, and the first step is to really figure out which type that is. You have the perfectionist. We went over that. everything's got to be perfect, or the moment needs to be perfect in order to move forward. Then we've got the worriers, right? Those are the ones that you have that, oh well, what if this happens, what if that happens, what if something else happens, so I need to mow the lawn. Oh well, I'm going to go out to the garage, and then, oh well, what if there's no gas, and what if I go outside, and what if my neighbor doesn't like it,
All the
what if
what ifs, all the what
all
ifs.
the what ifs. Yeah, those are the worriers. And then you've got the dreamers. Personally, the dreamers are my favorite. I mean, I fell into the category of a dreamer too. So the dreamer is, we've got big plans, we've got these big ideas, we want to get them out. And then once we go to actually execute them, we get caught up in the details. We either are overwhelmed because we don't know where to start, or, you know, we just get bored because thinking about how to design, a great piece of art or a great piece of music is often more fun than actually doing it, right?
Yeah,
So once
yeah.
you start actually getting into it, it's not as fun.
Yeah, the
And
nuts and
then,
bolts of it.
yeah, exactly. And then we have the crisis maker, which I think that was a lot of us in school. We'd get a paper that was due in 2 weeks, and we'd leave it to the last minute.
All-nighter.
Yeah, pull the all nighter because we like that burst of creativity or that burst of dopamine that we get from actually finishing it, and it also creates that sense of urgency. So if a task isn't important to us, then the crisis maker waits until it is important. So
Mhm.
exactly when it's due, right?
Yeah, I remember that scene when, in college, yeah, everybody pulling all night. I was more yeah, I don't know, I was more proactive. If something's due, I'd get it done, like, a week before, because there's other stuff I'm doing, because if you have other things in your life, like, that you value, like, you're an athlete, you're an artist, you're doing other things, it's like, well, you can't be always waiting till the last minute that everything you're juggling so many things, and they all start falling down. So you have to start planning. But planning, some people, like, they hate planning. So you find people with the procrastinate, do they not like the plan, or they just don't like to plan the thing that they procrastinate on?
It really depends. When somebody doesn't like to plan, I like to think that that's kind of like the defier. That's the last sort of archetype of the procrastinators of the big five. And the defier doesn't like to have to do anything. And that's just a simple mindset tweak. Really, it's actually one of the easiest ones to overcome, because it is all mindset. So
Mhm.
when you say when you have to do something, you feel that resistance. But if you say, I choose to, or I am, I get to do this, then you're taking back the power, the control, and then you'll find that resistance falls away. Just a quick example, like when my wife asked me to do the dishes, I don't want to do the damn dishes. I mean, come on. I've been working all day. I just finished eating something, and I really just want to watch. I don't know. I just want to do whatever I want to do on the TV here, and I literally just sat down. That hasn't even creased or gotten warm from where I've sat.
Yeah, it's got
And then,
to
and then I stop and I take a beat. I say to myself, okay, I don't have to do this. I don't, because it's true. There's literally two things in life that aren't a choice. You when you're born, you don't get that choice, and when you die, you don't get that choice. Everything else in between is a choice. So I say, okay, no, I'm choosing to do this because I love my wife. I know this will make it easier for her, and I don't really feel like fighting. And then once I'm done, I can go back into what I'm doing without being
yeah.
disturbed,
Well, you have to
rather than sitting
figure
there, I have to do the dishes. No.
path of least resistance is like it is if I don't do this, am I gonna cause some and then maybe I don't want it's like, so I'm gonna avoid that by actually doing this, but you think if you're are you thinking a couple steps ahead, or you think, oh, well, you don't know where your head's at, but productivity is a big part of our life today. Everybody wants efficiency, they want productivity, they're using all these tools. But if you're in this kind of procrastination type of cycle, is efficiency and productivity on your mind at all?
It is. Sometimes what procrastination is too is that you want to knock out all the easiest tasks first, to not
Mm,
knock out the ones that you maybe don't want to get to for whatever reason. Maybe they're harder. Maybe they're unpleasant emotionally. Like you find them boring. The issue with doing that though is that when a task comes in and you're stuck there, then that one of two things normally happens, right? You either get a bunch of the tasks that you want to do that are easy, you knock them out, and then all these other tasks start to come in. And as those other tasks you don't want to get to, they're still there. And in between these other tasks you're getting that you like to do, you're also getting more similar ones to the ones you don't want to do. So eventually just, topples over.
Yeah, you get too many things that are too heavy. Like all the heavy tasks are just piling up, and now I got this
Mhm.
big mountain of tasks that I
Yeah.
don't want to do, and now they're all in front of me.
Oh no, yeah, and I have a very good method for that. That's a little unorthodox. I think the listeners might enjoy this. So I had a client that was very tactile. Nothing was really working. They didn't like journaling, brain dumping, planning, but they had their task list. I said, okay, let's do this a different way. So they were a gym person. They were a pretty fit guy. I said, all right, let's sit down and do this. You have your task list, okay? So I want you to go out to. We went to Amazon. We bought a bunch of weights. We had 1 gram, we had 10-gram weights, and we had everything up to a pound. I said, okay, I want you to give a weight to these based on the importance you think they have. And then we stuck it in a bag and said, okay, you're going to carry that bag, and every time you do a task, you're going to offload something. You're going to offload a
Mm,
weight and let's see what happens, right? So obviously he did all the important ones first. You want to get rid of that. He had something like it was 40 pounds in his bag, so he got through that task list pretty quick. At least the ones that were really important.
wow, that's a good way of like organizing. Cause like you use like project methodologies, because like the old school, I'm a software guy. Old school methodology was like waterfall, which created this big, large document. And that's kind of not looked at highly anymore unless you still live in COBOL world.
Mhm.
But or mainframe world, everything's agile, which is like incremental, which means that we can the good thing about agile is like waterfall, you had to have everything complete or it wasn't going to work. So
Mhm.
you can't have any missing parts to that waterfall or it's not even going to be able to be released. But in agile, you need to point one incrementally. You could put, I'm only going to do first two UI screens on this app for the phone. And then later we'll introduce there's 10, but we can release it with two.
Mhm.
With a waterfall method, we have to release all 10. So then it might take us like a year and a half to do it versus like the agile method, we could do that in maybe a month or two. So is this, if you start to think about like, how you can do things in the real world, like if you don't bite off, it's the basic concept is don't bite off too much. Like don't try to do everything at once because then you get nothing done.
Exactly. Exactly.
But in terms of energy management, the concept of energy management is that in terms of like your physical energy, your psychic energy, your like emotional energy. What type of energy are you talking about in that?
Oh, it's all kinds of it's all of the above. It's the whole package because you can't really talk about your physical energy without talking about your emotional energy, right? So energy management is essentially knowing when you are at your most energetic, when you have the most energy, and but not only that, but recognizing your drainers and your energizers. So if you have a bunch of tasks that you have to do, and there's really no order in terms of importance, then you want to try to do all the tasks. You want to try to do more tasks when you're feeling at your most energetic and you want to avoid putting all your drainers right at the beginning of your day. Um,
Hmm.
I had a client that put a couple of he had all his meetings in the morning, but these meetings were very draining for him emotionally because a lot of them didn't have anything to do with him. He was the CEO of a startup, and these meetings really had nothing to do with him. Really, they just stressed him out. So, and then he was sitting there, and the rest of the day, he had that constant background noise of those meetings in the morning, right? And I said, "Well, why do you do those in the morning?" And he says, "Well, that's just kind of traditionally when everyone does them." I was like, "Well, what if you tried putting them at the end of your day?" You know? And lo and behold, he puts the meetings at the end of the day. One, they don't run as long because people
Everybody
want to
wants to
go
get
home.
out. They want to
People
go
want to
home.
go home, right? And two, he noticed that he was able to get more done during the day because he didn't have that initial emotional strain
Yeah,
right
it's a
the first thing
drag
in
on
the
your
morning.
day. Well, it's like this whole, if you do something that's gonna put you in the dumps right at the beginning, then it's gonna wrecks the whole thing. Like you do the thing that like you dread the most. It's like this boring thing, this thing you really don't need to do. Then it just wipes you out, And like you're saying, it's like if you find a way to reorganize, and a lot of people do things because it's like, oh, that's because we always did it. But is there a real reason? No, like challenge your premise. Like, is there a real reason to do it that way if it's not really helping you?
Exactly. Exactly. And then you wanted to talk about emotional energy. Yeah, you do need to know a big part of figuring out procrastination and sort of what you can do and when. You actually have to drill down into the task as well. So you get to the task of say doing the laundry, right? And you go to doing the laundry, and you're like, oh, okay, I'm feeling okay with this. Put the clothes into the washing machine. "Yeah, I'm still feeling okay with this. Dry it. Okay, yeah, still feeling okay with this. You get to the part where you take them out of the dryer and you have to fold them and put them away. Nope, nope.
But you don't like
That's where my resistance is. So then you have to ask yourself, okay, what is it about folding the laundry that I don't like, or what is it about putting it away I don't like? And it's well, oh, now I got to walk all the way down to the stair. I got to walk all the way from the laundry to the bedroom. I got to open the drawers. I got to move stuff around. I got to put it in, and
you
that's the part I really don't
fold, you
like.
gotta put things on hangers. It's like, yeah, it's a lot of work.
Yeah. So once you've identified that, then you can start to work out strategies to get it right. So my personal favorite strategy was I like delegation. I'm probably going to get shot for saying this, but if you know, sometimes you work better in pairs and stuff, right? So go with my wife and say, hey, you know what, I'll help you with the laundry. I'll put it in there, but yeah, I really don't like folding it or whatever, right? And she's like, no, did you do the whole thing? It's
So,
like, okay, all right. So what you do is you get the shirt and and you fold it sort of half. You do it in just such a way that it's not quite right, and then you
yeah.
stuff it into the drawers. And she comes out, and then she comes out and refolds it anyway. And she's like, "Oh, don't bother doing it." Oh,
Yeah, it's a strategy. Like it's like if I mess up, like my wife and my daughter are like, you know what? Dad's banned from doing this task because he does it half.
yeah,
you know,
that's
yeah. So it's like I was like, but that time it's like you're doing that on purpose. It's like, oh, like my daughter was like, she's in the 20s and she's like, I think I figured out what dad's doing, and it's like wrecked my plan. Yeah, that's you got to be aware. But in terms of like ideas, like maybe some after lessons learned working with people, are there any key things like key things you found that are like in common, or things like hacks or anything really important in your practice of being a procrastination coach that you can
oh
bring
for
to your
sure.
audience?
Oh, for sure, for sure. Um, Being hyper aware, knowing yourself is the first thing to get that sense of awareness. Um, journal, journaling. If
Mm.
you don't like journaling, you don't like to write, record yourself on your phone. I mean, you
A
got your
voice
phone with you
memo,
all day
voice
anyway.
memo. Yeah.
A quick, 15-second recording or 15-second video, whatever. Just record how you're feeling throughout the day and just record everything. How you feel after you eat a meal, how you feel at a certain time of day, how you feel after doing a certain task. And then as you start to build this, and I normally go through this with my clients for the first couple of weeks. I really want them to pinpoint, not only the tasks that they feel like that they can't get started. I want them to pinpoint how they're feeling against all their tasks in general. Because once you line all those up, patterns start to emerge, and then you learn exactly what you're dealing with, and then you can make a strategy to combat it, depending on what kind of procrastination it really is.
Mm. So the idea of like emotional blocks and heart walls, maybe you can talk about those.
Oh yeah. So the emotional blocks, again, that going back to my example with my own mother, that was an emotional block that kept me from going to see her, right? Um, so your emotional blocks, that again, I'm gonna go back to it, beat you over the head with it. Mindfulness, just being in the moment. It doesn't allow you to have any sort of depression or fear, anxiety, or anything like that, because the depression or nostalgia, whatever you want to call it, that's all in the past, no longer there. You go to the future, anxiety, again, doesn't exist. So all we have is right now. Again, there are many studies, many authors. Eckhart Tolle. There's Michael Singer. Um, there's so many that all talk about the same thing. And the heart walls is about all about us avoiding pain. And a big part of procrastination is avoiding either discomfort or pain of some sort, whether
Hmm.
that be emotional, physical, mental. A lot of it comes down to just plain pain. You're avoiding pain, and if you
Okay.
can understand the roots of of that pain, then you can start to deconstruct those heart walls, and you can start to move forward on those tasks that you don't necessarily even know the reason why you're avoiding them at the moment.
So it's kind of like you got to give yourself a permission structure to kind of address the pain issue, which is kind of similar to like the safety issue, which is all I think intertwined. Because that's the where as a singer songwriters creators, like we dive into our pain to create art. Most of the time, our work is coming from that place, and then what we have to worry about sometimes is like, do we create crisis moments just to create the art?
Mm.
And a lot of artists have been kind of accused of like, well, you guys create these like create chaos to keep on doing your art because that's what the only place you think that the valuable art comes from is that, right?
Mm.
So if you're happy, you don't think it's coming. So then you put yourself into the bad scene, which, I think in life, people who, even who are artists, put themselves into that, can actually be part of that same cycle.
Oh, it certainly can be. In terms of artists, yes, I know I haven't personally dealt with any of those, but I have heard of cases where, again, like you said, there was nothing really going on in the artist's life. He started writing a book about I forget what he was even about now exactly. He was writing a sort of like a almost like a pseudo memoir, loosely based on real, and he hit a block. And so, he was sitting at the barbecue one day or something, and he stands up, he's flipping burgers or something, and he sees he sees his aunt by the pool or something, and so he just gets up. He's like, I need ideas," and he doesn't even know why. He went over and he pushed her into the pool,
Keep the crisis.
and then and then the other individual who was talking to me about this, it was consulting, and said, well, why do you think they did it? And then he divulged that it was because, like you said, he wanted to create some excitement so he could stir up the muse.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's a big issue sometimes with a lot of artists is like, you have to, like, you can create when you're happy, but a lot of times well, I can only create when I'm melancholy or I'm destitute or I'm like in a bad place. And it's like, why? Like, you can't, because like there are pieces of work, like you give an idea, like Stevie Wonder is like does a lot of work that's very uplifting. Isn't coming from like a negative place. Isn't coming from like a Nirvana Kurt Cobain place, like or a Neil Young Tonight's the Night place. It doesn't have to come from that. You can actually come from a different place. Funk music and disco music seem to be like happy.
Hmm.
That you're funky, you're dancing, like you're bringing it going into the light rather than going into the dark. And it's kind of like Gemini, two sides of a coin.
Hmm.
It's kind of like everything's got gray areas, so you can kind of it's never all one thing or the other. But a lot of times people go to the extremes because that's easier. It's like if you try to go have a little bit of balance, where there's a little bit of this and a little bit of that, but it doesn't have to be all this or all that.
No, that is very true, and but there's actually a psychological reason that um, that there is science and that there's research to back up that. Again, going back to the evolutionary throwback, the human brain, in normal circumstances, is more geared towards holding on to the negative than it is to holding on to the positive. And the reasoning behind that in evolution was because, when we were cavemen and we were running around half naked with nothing, no way to defend ourselves, normally the bad things killed us. So
Yeah, yeah,
that
saber-tooth
stuck in
and a
our
wolf. Yeah, it's like these things are gonna come and kill us, so we gotta think about the worst case scenario to survive. And then that mindset still pervades into the modern world even if you don't have the wolf at the door. Got some other wolf at the door that, it's the virtual wolf at the door.
Exactly, exactly. But what people don't really understand too is that you can talk about vibrational frequencies too. So there's been studies into this where if you're in a sad mood, you want to listen to sad music. Well, why is that? Well, it's because those frequencies on the same length, and your brain, you're
Same
feeding
tune,
your brain what it wants and what it needs to process so that you can get through that. Well, you know, and get through it, right? But and when you're happy, you want to listen to more happy music. But the thing is that you can actually influence your emotions by what you listen to.
Mhm.
I was actually told this at a Sunday school when I was younger, and I thought it was complete, BS, right? like I'm gonna keep listening to my Kurt Cobain. I like me my Nirvana. It's like but it's true because when you listen to that and that's all you're listening to, then you can get into that. You actually rewire your brain to start
Yeah,
thinking
like
a different way.
downward spiral type of thing. Yeah, you get this kind of manic depression, melancholy. And I run into some artists. Well, that's like real art. It's like kind of like a starving artist, man. Some might say it's like it's kind of not cool to be happy.
Hmm.
It's more hip to be. Hipsters are more into like on the downward spiral, like a Soundgarden. But like what happens with Soundgarden? What happens with Nirvana? You know, you end up not being here. Like
Hmm.
so you got to get to a balance where, yeah, some days you wanna hear something hard, or go listen to some Led Zepp, you know? Like,
Hmm.
listen to some Van Halen, but do I have to go that dark
Hmm.
to feel the energy? I can listen to some punk rock, some Sex Pistols or some Husker Du or some kinda Buzzcocks or something, and get into something that's got a lot of power, and I like the punk aesthetic because it seems like, okay, they're being authentic, and so I kinda get what I got out of the punks is kinda like the Talking Heads. They came out of the punk movement, but they're very quirky.
Hmm.
They're not very dark. They're more like this esoteric. They came out of that punk energy. It came out of the same place that the Ramones came out of, the same place the Blondie came out of, but they found a different way to do it. David Byrne, he found this other way to have a punk aesthetic in a very creative way that wasn't negative. It was just quirky and different.
Hmm. Hmm. Actually, and the one thing I just want to circle back to really quick too is that especially young children, you know, um, we have those kids song and they're always upbeat and happy and things, but it's true. So younger children, especially in the formative years, once they hit puberty, they tend to gravitate towards this kind of music, and this is where we get emo, this is where we get goth, this is where we get all these
Yeah.
other behaviors, right? And people say that no, it's a choice, but you can do this experiment yourself. If you get a couple of plants, like two plants that are the same or 10 plants that are the same, and half of them you only play, say, classical or upbeat music for, and the other half you play like downtrodden, like Godsmack, Cradle of Filth, like the heaviest stuff you can find.
Alice in Chains.
Yeah, those Alice in Chains. Yeah, those plants will actually not do as well as the plants that are doing getting
Yeah,
the
I've heard that. Well, it makes a lot of sense because plants take a lot of inputs from with their environment. They can pick up a lot of different, vibrational being. They're picking up the waves, emotional waves, sound waves, some people say they can they can smell, they can see in some ways with some of the nodules I've read about
Yeah.
into the chemical kind of patterns, seeing things in that way. But yeah, life is that way. Humans we pick up the bad vibe. You people say, "Oh, that's foo-foo," but everybody's had a bad vibe somehow, right? They've walked into a room and felt the bad vibe, and they can't really logically explain it because there's things that you can't see that you still can feel, right?
Oh, yeah.
And that's how the world, the universe is kind of set up on the frequencies very important. The musicians, we've picked up on it. We and we can kind of drive a crowd in different directions, knowing what these frequencies and waves and patterns will do. And if you're kind of a master of it, you know what will happen. And so you kind of control the moment. Like, but you can control that in your life because, like, you talk. Your talking can be musical. It can be frequency. It can have vibes. It can direct in all kinds of ways. But some people don't understand the power of their own voice.
Oh, for sure. I mean, just going back into history, we know that words have power. I mean, when you look at all of those stories with incantations, or any kind of magic,
Yeah,
when they started talking about that. I mean, all those stories come from somewhere.
yeah. I mean, all the mysticism, all the people talking about the druids and warlocks and the Celtic, going to every age, Celtic or African, Asian. You go all over the world, and you'll find examples in indigenous cultures and old text and old practices and oral histories of people talking kind of in a poetic way. You notice if you go back to older language, it's more poetic. It's more like Shakespeare. The written language is more like the Bible. I mean, it's like all the old texts, they're written like poems, like these massive poems. And why? Because they're trying to influence you, and they know that that rhythm will make you feel it, right? If you have it with that kind of rhythm going on. So there's the idea that that frequency of that pattern will actually make you behave a certain way
Oh,
or
it
process.
will. It will. It will because again, we pick up on theta waves, brain waves. You can actually study brain waves, and you can see that the waves as they come in, they actually do have an effect on our mind as well. So I mean, there's lots of research to that. And if we actually could use more of our brains than we use now, more effectively, then it's why dolphins have echolocation.
Yeah,
Because they use more of their brain,
they're able
or
to
they,
pick
they use
up
their
on
brains differently.
frequencies.
No,
Yeah,
exactly. But I mean, we as humans, we have that capability too. It's just that we don't use it.
yeah. Well,
We never
we
develop
don't
it.
focus on our untapped capacity. Though, maybe in this new age where we don't have to do menial things as much, we can focus more on opening up our minds. And then the real procrastination of not using most of your brain capacity can be addressed.
Oh yeah, I'm sure that'll be a big one too.
But I want to thank you for being a guest on the show. I do appreciate it. We do have another episode we have to come to, but I did have a great time talking to you today. We do want people to click your LinkedIn, but if people click on that, what do they find there? Is that the best way for them to get in touch with you?
Yes, that is the best way to get in touch with me. However, if they feel like they want to figure out what kind of procrastinator they are, I do have it's 8 questions, a free 8 question quiz on my website, www.procrastinationstation.ca.
Hmm.
And
Okay, great.
after the test, I even let you go ahead. There's a calendar link after that. You can talk to me. We'll sit down for an hour. We'll come out with some strategies for you, and whether we work together or not, at least you'll have something to move forward with, and maybe a little more understanding.
We do encourage people that have listened to the show to do a follow up. Check out the URL you just mentioned and the LinkedIn, and you can get a deeper dive with Chris on that. So thank you again for being a guest on the Family Like a Ghost podcast. We do appreciate it.
Oh, thank you for having me.